Hey, so this week I thought I would bring you something a little bit different, and I don't see too many people addressing this whole situation, but I find people that have problems with it all the time. And that is, what is Lightroom really doing? So as quickly as possible, I'm going to try to demonstrate what a library is, what it does, and why the catalog functions the way it does. So let me just start by jumping over here and going to this little demo here. So what I have is obviously a library with a lot of books. Imagine that that library is, instead of books, is actually images, and we're trying to address a categorizing system for that library. So what we have is we have a CPU. And that CPU then has an external hard drive, which most of us have, which is a device that we normally store our images on rather than storing them on our CPU. Highly recommended. So, simplest form, we have a camera, we have an SD card. The images go from that camera through our computer, get stored on that external hard drive. And Lightroom is sitting off to the side. So Lightroom is there, and what Lightroom is essentially this big eye. Lightroom watches what's happening. It can do it for you. It can actually move those images for you, which again I highly recommend. But in reality, it also is just kind of, when you're using Lightroom, it's keeping track of where files are going, where they're being stored. And we'll talk about that. So it's the all-seeing eye. And it's actually literally the virtual librarian. It creates a catalog. Now, what is a catalog? A catalog is a structure of file systems. Now, I recommend that you do a tree structure. It was brought about in the 70s. It's been a standard nomenclature, which is the DOS tree structure. And we create a master folder of images, and then we have subfolders under that, and then we break those subfolders down further and further. And you can see I've broken it down to personal, travel, wildlife, and then under wildlife, lions and tigers and bears, oh my, and reptiles and snakes and frogs. So if I have a bare image on my computer, now this is on the left-hand side, this is my CPU. If I have a bare image and I store it in my file structure, it's actually going to go underneath wildlife bears. And what we then have is our virtual librarian. Now our virtual librarian, now she's busy, and what she's doing is making a catalog of where that image is. And essentially that catalog is that. It is a 3x5 card of where that image resides on your computer, a thumbnail of that image, the metadata from that image, and how you would like to edit it are all stored on that 3x5 card, which we call an XMP file. It's stored in the catalog. That XMP file is actually just stored into that catalog, unless you do something that we'll talk about here momentarily. But basically, that XMP file and all of the data about your developing, the metadata, the thumbnail are all stored on that virtual 3x5 card in a catalog. And that catalog contains that thumbnail. Now, you notice that there's a split. I hear people all the time making the comment that Lightroom stored my images, or I installed my images into Lightroom, or I let Lightroom store my images. Lightroom does not store the images. Lightroom knows where the images are stored. Big difference, right? You're not storing your images in Lightroom. You're storing them on the hard drive. Lightroom is a catalog that knows where those images are stored. So be careful about that nomenclature, because when you develop an image, what happens is that if I develop this image and turn it into a black and white, what happens is Lightroom does not change, cannot change, never will change. It's impossible for Lightroom to change the original file. The only thing it can do is add the editing information from that developing process that you did in Lightroom to make an addition to the XMP file, and that's where it stores it. It creates an XMP file, and it stores that XMP file in the catalog. So when you turn around and would like to take another look at that image, it will absolutely, whenever you decide that you want to open that bear image in Lightroom, it will look at the bear image, say, hey, the bear image is stored on the hard drive over here under Images, Wildlife, Bears, show you the image, and then immediately apply the XMP edits to that image. And then once it has done that, it will show you the black and white image. Now understand, this happens in a fraction of a second. And the preview of this image will change based upon the developing that you do. Because remember, the preview is just a little thumbnail size of the image. If you develop the image, why store the original preview when I can store the updated preview with your develop settings? So that's what it does. Now, there's a couple advantages, right? Because if the raw image, my original image, plus the XMP equals my developed image, then I can also use multiple versions of that development process. And that development process may in fact create one that looks very similar to the original, just a little more saturated. Then we have one that's toned down, and then finally we have a black and white. All three of those have basically three separate XMPs. Now in the new version of Lightroom, all of this is stored in one XMP file. Years ago, we would have had three separate XMPs. You would have seen an XMP for each one of these separate virtual copies. And that's what these are, our virtual copies. But we really only have one original file. And it will take and create three virtual copies if that's what you want. And those three virtual copies will show up as separate 3x5 cards with a different preview and all the develop settings and everything you need to process that image on that 3x5 card stored in the catalog. All right. So that being said, let's go ahead and jump over here to Photoshop for a second, because one of the things that is confusing to most people, and let me just hide my lines here if I can. The problem with Photoshop lately is that, Lightroom. The problem with Lightroom is that Lightroom came out in 2007 and it was just called Lightroom. And then somewhere in 2013, we decided to have a Lightroom Mobile created. And so that was 2013. So we had Lightroom and we had Lightroom Mobile. Fine, everybody got along great. And then 2015 came around and they decided, you know what we need to do is we need to call Lightroom Creative Cloud, Lightroom CC, and we still had Lightroom Mobile. This is 2015. And this made sense because we started to use the Creative Cloud application between Lightroom Mobile and Lightroom, and everything was really fun, and we had the Creative Cloud application. And then in 2018, they said, oh, what we're going to do is we're going to change Lightroom CC to Lightroom CC Classic. So this is 2018, and everybody just kind of went, well, whatever you want to call it. If it's still Lightroom CC, and if you want to add Classic afterwards, okay. What we weren't prepared for was the whole Classic Coke and Coke issue going on, because what they did was they said, we're going to turn Lightroom CC into Classic by subtly adding this after CC, because in 2019, they threw us the curve. 2019, they said, hey, Lightroom Classic, and I'm going to dump my face off of here, Lightroom Classic is now going to be just called Lightroom Classic, and we're going to get rid of the CC. We're just going to call it Lightroom Classic. But then they did the big switch. They said, hey, wait a minute, now instead of calling Lightroom Mobile, we're just going to call that Lightroom. Wait a minute, in 2007, Lightroom was Lightroom, Lightroom was Lightroom, and then all of a sudden Lightroom Mobile became Lightroom, and now we have to refer to Lightroom Classic as Lightroom Classic, which was the original Lightroom, and now we have Lightroom Mobile, which is now called Lightroom. And if this didn't mess up the world, I don't know what did. But I still have people that will sign into my Lightroom classes and want to be learning Lightroom Mobile when in fact we're teaching most of our classes off of Lightroom Classic. Now, I am going to be doing some Lightroom mobile classes as well, but I will make certain that I identify that as such. So I hope this helps to clear up a couple of things. And one of the other things that I really want to clear up, I was very specific about the fact that your XMP files, if you remember, these XMP files are stored in the catalog. And I don't recommend that. I actually recommend that you come up here, and we're going to just get out of full screen mode here for a second, and come down here and show my preferences for my catalog settings. Now, if you're on a Mac, it'll be under Lightroom Classic. If you're on a PC, it'll be under Edit and come down to Catalog Settings. But we're going to open up Catalog Settings, and this will look the same whether you're on a Mac or on a PC. Under Metadata, so you have three main tabs up here. We've got General, we've got File Handling, and we've got Metadata. Under Metadata, the third one down is automatically write changes into XMP. Oh, wait a minute. What is that? What that does is that turns around and actually adds a separate XMP file to your hard drive. So if I were to come down and open up my Finder, and I were to go to one of my image folders, let's go to Programs, and let's go to Lightroom, and let's go to this one, and let's open up, that's my class, so let's come over here and let's just go to a single folder. This is a single folder of one of my Lightroom classes. Do you notice this XMP file? Why is that XMP file there? I told you previously that the XMPs are always stored in the Lightroom catalog. That's one of the reasons that Lightroom is pedantic about the fact that if you exit the catalog, they want to save it. They want to do a backup. And the reason they want to do a backup is because the only place where this XMP is stored without choosing that separate function that I told you over here, without choosing this function, the only place your XMPs are stored is in the catalog itself. So you better be backing it up, and you better be pedantic about it, because if you lose this catalog and you haven't backed it up, you lost all of the edits for all of your images forever. However, if you check mark this, what it actually does is it turns around and stores XMPs for each one of your edits directly into your hard drive alongside of the image. So when I open up this image, this raw file will automatically, or this XMP file, will automatically get added to this raw file and show me the edited version. I highly recommend that you do that. I hope this was helpful for today. If you like what I'm bringing to the table as far as thought process and education on Lightroom itself, please subscribe, follow, comment. I appreciate all of that. Give me a thumbs up. Let me know what you think. And I'm going to be doing this Transform Tuesdays every Tuesday for as long as I can keep it up. So I hope you have a great day, and talk to you soon.